Tonight, a report commissioned by the Catholic Church claims to know why the child sex abuse scandal happened, but victims groups aren't buying it. I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, turning up the heat on Syria. President Obama slaps the first ever sanctions on Syria's president for the violent crackdown on anti-government protesters. The human smuggling trade. X-rays help Mexican police catch more than 500 migrants hidden in trucks bound for the U.S. And new instructions for acetaminophen for children under 2, so they won't get an overdose.
From CBS News World Headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. When the sex abuse scandal involving priests first made headlines, Catholics in this country, and that's nearly 1 out of 4 adults, were horrified. Trusted members of the clergy abusing children, church leaders covering it up. It was a betrayal, a breach of faith, and it would cost American churches nearly $3 billion in legal settlements. Many Catholics demanded to know how it all happened. Today, an answer came in a report commissioned by America's Catholic bishops. But Elaine Quijano reports it was not the answer many of the victims were hoping for.
For survivors of clergy sexual abuse, today marks another deep disappointment.
These are the bishops who lied to us about transferring priests. These are the same bishops who continue to lie to us.
The new report, 5 years in the making, was commissioned by U.S. bishops and conducted by researchers from New York's John Jay College of Criminal Justice. It partially blames the clergy sex abuse crisis on the sexual revolution that began 50 years ago.
The increased frequency of abuse in the 1960s and 1970s is consistent with patterns of increased deviance in society during that time. The social influences intersected with vulnerabilities of some individual priests.
In addition to social influences, the report cites poor seminary training and isolation of priests. But for former New York City sex crimes prosecutor Linda Fairstein, blaming culture rings hollow.
These crimes occurred for decades, if not centuries, before there was a sexual revolution. That's a fact.
The church provided the information for analysis and makes a controversial decision to label priests pedophiles only if they molested children aged 10 or younger. By their standards, only 5% of the priests fit the pedophile profile.
That's such a false standard, such a false definition by which to look at pedophiles. Most of the kids that clergy have access to alone are going to be in the 9, 10 to 15, 16-year-old category. It's illegal to engage in sexual contact with them. So it's a very artificial thing. It's semantics to just say, we're talking about under 10.
Researchers also concluded there was no way to identify potential abusers ahead of time and said homosexuality, celibacy, and an all-male priesthood had no bearing on the crisis. Today's report got mixed reaction from Catholics leaving church today.
It's kind of like asking the fox as he comes out of the hen house how many chickens were in there before you went in, you know. So it's a step in the right direction, but obviously we also need independent surveys, reviews, and in-depth coverage.
Now, today's report does not address the problem of bishops who covered up for priests and comes just days after the Vatican issued new guidelines for dealing with priests who sexually abuse children. But those guidelines are not mandatory, and there are no punishments for bishops who don't comply. Katie?
Elaine Quijano. Elaine, thanks so much. Turning now to the Middle East, for weeks the White House had moved carefully on Syria, saying little even as the government there kept up its crackdown on protesters. But today that changed. Chip Reed is our chief White House correspondent. Chip, President Obama is now taking aim at Syria's leaders.
Well, today President Obama imposed sanctions on Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and 6 other top Syrian officials. Those sanctions would freeze their assets in the United States and make it illegal for Americans to do business with them. The president ordered the sanctions in response to Assad's brutal crackdown on anti-government protests in which about 850 people have been killed. Now, Assad is in a strong position in Syria, so it's not clear whether the sanctions will have much effect, but they're significant because this is the first time President Obama has pointed his finger directly at Assad, essentially declaring that he is now the new bad guy in that part of the world. Tomorrow, President Obama will deliver a major speech in which he'll argue that the mass protests in the Middle East and North Africa present an opportunity for the United States to advance American values in that part of the world. But in recent days, the president's critics have questioned how he could give a speech on freedom and democracy while not condemning Assad directly. Those critics say that is why the president today decided to impose the sanctions. But here at the White House, they insist that the timing is just a coincidence. Katie?
Chip Reed at the White House. Chip, thank you. Juan Zarate was a member of President George W. Bush's national security team. He's now an analyst for CBS News. Juan, how big a policy change are these sanctions for the Obama administration?
Katie, it's a major policy shift. It's a shot across the bow targeting President Assad and other high-level Syrian officials. It's really a financial cue that President Assad has to stop his repression. He has to either reform or step down. And I think this puts us on a path towards confrontation with Syria.
Well, will he reform, or, what will he do? What are the ramifications of these sanctions?
Well, I think the hope is that these sanctions would change Syria's behavior, but I don't think that's in the cards. I think what you're likely to see is continued repression from the regime, likely additional protests from the Syrian people, and I think what you're likely to see is more violence on the streets, leading likely to more tension and confrontation between the U.S. and Syria.
So, Juan, can you envision a scenario in which there would ever be any military action against Syria?
Well, I don't think so, Katie. I think we may have started down a path toward regime change, but it doesn't mean that we're necessarily marching toward war. I think the Obama administration will be loath to engage in another military action in a Muslim country, unleashing instability. And I think the administration's also worried about what may follow Assad. He's the devil we know. We don't know what follows him.
And let's turn to Pakistan, Juan. At the Pentagon today, Defense Secretary Robert Gates said there's no proof top Pakistani officials knew where Osama bin Laden was hiding. Let's listen.
I've seen no evidence at all that the senior leadership knew. In fact, I've seen some evidence to the contrary. And we have no evidence yet with respect to anybody else. My supposition is somebody knew.
Juan, what kind of message is Robert Gates trying to send Pakistan?
Secretary Gates and the administration are sending dual messages. In public, they're trying to give the Pakistani leadership some breathing space, trying to tone down the tension. In private, behind the scenes, they want accountability. They know there was some degree of complicity.
All right, Juan Zarate. Juan, thanks so much. The president, by the way, flew to Connecticut today. Stormy weather in Hartford forced Air Force One to abort the first landing attempt. The plane landed safely the second time around. The White House says the president was never in danger, and he later delivered the commencement address at the Coast Guard Academy in New London. Now to a case of human smuggling south of the border. Police found more than 500 people packed into 2 trucks in southern Mexico. They were enduring unthinkable conditions to get to America and still had nearly 1,000 miles to go. Bill Whitaker now on how they were caught.
The 513 migrants, hot, tired, and dehydrated, were rounded up and processed for detention shortly after the 2 trucks smuggling them across the border tried to blow past a security checkpoint. Authorities were alerted to the human cargo by this amazingly detailed X-ray caught at the border, showing people sitting, standing, jammed into the trucks. 240 in one truck, 273 in the other, packed so tightly up to 7 people per square yard they could barely move or breathe, with temperatures topping 100 degrees. More alarming, they came from at least 8 different countries, 410 from Guatemala, others as far away as India, Nepal, and China, a smuggling pipeline run by gangs.
We're talking about something that's far more systematic than people realize. They learned how to do this by trying to move drugs and other contraband.
After the Golden Venture, carrying 286 Chinese nationals, ran aground off New York 18 years ago, authorities have cracked down on human smuggling by sea, even by train. The smugglers' preferred mode of transportation now, trucks. These migrants say they paid $7,000 each for a truck ride to the U.S. border, though the price they end up paying the gangs is far higher.
Through all sorts of activities that we really don't like, indentured servitude, prostitution.
Mexican authorities say they have intercepted almost 800 migrants entering the country illegally just this month. Border observers say that means many times that number made it through. Bill Whitaker, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Meanwhile, as you know, Dominique Strauss-Kahn was arrested trying to leave the U.S. The head of the International Monetary Fund is charged with sexually assaulting a hotel maid here in New York City. But a poll conducted in his native France finds more than half the people there think he's the victim of some sort of plot. Today, Strauss-Kahn's accuser told her side of the story to a grand jury. Michelle Miller has the latest on the case.
Today, the alleged victim at the center of the international sex scandal got her first day in court. Behind closed doors, the 32-year-old widow from Guinea, West Africa, gave a grand jury graphic details of the alleged sexual assault by IMF chief Dominique Strauss-Kahn.
Her case is credible based upon her testimony alone, but there is other evidence. I'm not at liberty to discuss it. But let's just say that there is sufficient evidence in this case for the district attorney to seek an indictment.
Police reportedly have DNA samples cut from a hotel room carpet. DSK voluntarily submitted to a DNA test Sunday. Results are being fast-tracked. His defense team is likely to argue that the sex was consensual, a suggestion that outrages both her attorney and friends.
There was nothing about any aspect of this encounter remotely consensual.
She's a family person. She's a hard-working lady. That's what she was there for. She's there working, doing her job.
Until now, Strauss-Kahn has been respected for the way he did his job at the IMF.
What is the IMF doing? Trying to provide advice on behalf of the entire international community?
He's the kind of guy that has the personality and credibility to forge agreements, to persuade people to do things they won't naturally be inclined to do, and to bring the leaders back to the table when the negotiations break down.
He was a wealthy man, too, with fancy cars and homes on 3 continents, including Washington's Tony Georgetown neighborhood. Now humbled by the accusations of a woman of little means, he is under increasing pressure worldwide to step down.
Of course, I can't comment on the case, but he's obviously not in a position to run the IMF.
There's a bail hearing tomorrow where sources tell CBS News the DSK's legal team will offer the post at least $1 million, submit him to electronic monitoring, and agree that he'll remain here in New York City. Katie?
Michelle Miller. Thank you, Michelle. In other news tonight, another big step for Arizona Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords as she recovers from an assassination attempt. In January, surgeons in Tucson removed a piece of her skull to relieve pressure on her brain. Today, doctors in Houston replaced that piece with a custom-made plastic implant that will allow her to move around without having to wear a helmet. Giffords' husband, astronaut Mark Kelly, is up in orbit commanding the next-to-last shuttle mission. Today, he guided Endeavour as it docked with the International Space Station. NASA engineers looking for damage to the shuttle's heat shield say they found 3 areas of concern. They could order a closer inspection by the shuttle crew. And still ahead here on the CBS Evening News, what's known about the child, now a teenager, fathered out of wedlock by Arnold Schwarzenegger. But up next, the push for new guidelines to keep infants from overdosing on popular fever-reducing drugs. For years, children's medications that contain acetaminophen have come with instructions telling parents how much to give kids age 2 and older. Today, an FDA panel voted unanimously to recommend adding dosing guidelines for children under 2 as well for medications like children's Tylenol to prevent overdoses. Dr. John LaPook is our medical correspondent. John, why hasn't there been dosing information for children under 2 before? That seems crazy to me.
Well, Katie, the idea was right now the labels say if the kid's under 2, check with your doctor, and the idea was to prevent overdoses. But ironically, that led to overdoses by parents who just winged it and gave them the wrong amounts.
Now, I understand this FDA panel also, John, voted to keep the fever-reducing claim on the label, but remove the claim of pain relief. Why is that?
Well, the panel felt that there was no proof that the pain-relieving effect really worked. And when you think about it, it's easy to measure temperature, but how do you measure pain, especially in a kid who's crying and may not be able to verbalize?
And also, I know the panel said that the label should have dosing information according to weight as well as age. And of course, any parent would know that makes perfect sense, right?
Right. There are 5-year-olds and then there are 5-year-olds.
Right.
They did something else that's very important. Right now, there's a high concentration liquid formula for infants. The idea is cram a lot of medicine into a tiny amount of volume. That makes
it's hard to get them to take
right,
it,
it's easier for them to get it down. What would happen in real life is that the parents of older kids, say age 2 to 12, would go to the shelf to get the lower concentration bottle, accidentally take the higher concentration bottle, the infant one, and end up overdosing their child. So they're getting rid of that higher concentration formulation, which is a very good idea.
All right, Dr. John LaPook. John, thanks so much. And if you'd like more information on this story, you can go to our partner in health news, WebMD.com, and search infant drug labels. Coming up next, Arnold Schwarzenegger's True Lies, the sequel. Arnold Schwarzenegger admitted fathering a child out of wedlock while married to Maria Shriver and apologized to her and their family. But the story doesn't end there. Here's Ben Tracy.
This picture taken in 2000 shows Arnold Schwarzenegger, an unknown child, and the woman he is believed to have fathered a child with more than a decade ago. Mildred Patricia Baina was a housekeeper at the mansion the former governor shared with his wife Maria Shriver. She worked for the couple for 20 years. She and her teenage son now live in this 4-bedroom home in a middle-class neighborhood.
Just a really, really nice kid. It's a kid you want to have, you know. My husband's taught high school for over 35 years, and there's not too many kids like this.
The child was reportedly born in October of 1997, a week after Maria Shriver gave birth to the couple's youngest son, Christopher. Divorce papers show that less than a month later, Baina separated from her husband, claiming they had no children. Schwarzenegger was supporting the child and has been ever since.
What's up, Arnold?
The former actor and politician has been hounded by cameras since admitting to fathering the child and keeping it hidden for all this time. Maria Shriver, who moved out in January, says she is trying to move on with her life. Last night she was in Chicago for a taping of one of the final episodes of The Oprah Winfrey Show. The two are close friends. Shriver is said to have first learned of her husband's secret child with their long-term employee in January.
You got to think, if this is an employee, there's been pictures shown, there's been discussions about this child, and all along she had no idea that this was her husband's child. That is a profound violation of trust.
Schwarzenegger says he has apologized to Shriver and his family, but those who once voted for him also feel betrayed.
It's like, what else is in the closet, you know? So we just have to wait and find out, you know? It's a shame.
A 14-year-old secret now tarnishing his legacy and splitting his family. Ben Tracy, CBS News, Los Angeles.
In northeast China, a life and death drama played out 7 stories up. A jilted bride in her wedding dress climbed out on a ledge. Her fiancé had run off with another woman days before their wedding. Just as she tried to jump, a police officer grabbed her by the neck and she was pulled to safety. She's now undergoing a psychiatric examination. Up next, a tale of 2 cities in the heart of the flood zone. We end tonight along the flooded Mississippi. A new forecast says the river will not surge over a levee, protecting thousands of acres of farmland near Vicksburg tomorrow. And at Natchez today, a 15-mile stretch of the river was reopened to cargo traffic. It was shut yesterday for fear the wakes from tugboats and tankers could put too much pressure on the levees. Natchez hasn't just opened its shipping lanes, it's also opened its doors to its sister city across the swollen river, Vidalia, Louisiana. Dean Reynolds reports any sibling rivalry has been set aside in the face of disastrous flooding.
Natchez, Mississippi occupies a prominent bluff overlooking the Big River. A tourist attraction, the city is well off and mostly dry. Just across the water in the lowlands lies Vidalia, Louisiana, a working-class town on the edge of a ruinous flood. At least 300 people are out of work there now, its riverfront businesses out of commission. The convention center, hotel, hospital, and medical building are inches from inundation and losing as much as $1 million a month.
So it's just empty. It's a shell, right.
Dr. John White, the staff, and the patients at the medical building were out of business after the makeshift dikes went up and the evacuation orders went out.
Normally, at this time of day, things would be buzzing around here.
Now, empty halls, empty rooms, empty beds.
But that's when a call came in from across the water.
That's just the way Natchez is. We want to help in any way we can. It's not an obligation, it's just a need, a want to help.
In no time, White and his colleagues were housed in the Natchez Medical Center.
So this is your new home, huh? This is our makeshift office.
His staff is back at work. His patients know the new address. It's as much as he can hope for. The Humane Society set up a shelter in Natchez for the pets of Vidalia.
If they feel like it's a part of their family, but they can't take them where they're going.
Natchez farmers offered grazing land for displaced livestock, and the Red Cross manned a post in Natchez with beds at the ready for their neighbors. The two mayors said the cooperation of their cities made them reflective.
What it takes, it seems like sometimes, is crises and disasters like this to bring us all together as one unified group. I don't understand why we can't do this all the time as a nation.
For now, they're united on this stretch of the Mississippi. As Mayor Copeland put it, the only thing that separates us is the river. Dean Reynolds, CBS News, Vidalia, Louisiana.
And that's the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric. Thank you for watching. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Good night.